The Vanishing Swimmer. It was a warm, sun-soaked summer afternoon when Sarah and her friends decided to explore a secluded beach they had heard whispers about from a local fisherman in a small coastal town. This beach, they were told, was a hidden paradise, far removed from the crowded tourist spots. They had to trek through a dense forest and descend a steep, rocky path to reach it, but the effort was worth it. As they emerged from the trees, they were greeted by a breathtaking view, a long stretch of pristine white sand, framed by towering cliffs, with the turquoise waves of the ocean gently lapping at the shore. The beach was nearly deserted, save for a few sunbathers and a couple of surfers riding the gentle swells. Sarah and her friends quickly set up their spot, excited to have found such a perfect, peaceful place. The hours slipped by as they swam, sunbathed, and enjoyed the idyllic surroundings. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon in shades of pink and orange, something caught Sarah's eye. Far out in the ocean, just beyond the line where the waves began to break, she spotted a lone swimmer. At first, she thought nothing of it, just another beachgoer enjoying the water. But as she watched, a sense of unease began to settle over her. The swimmers seemed to be struggling, their movements erratic and desperate. They would disappear beneath the surface for a few moments, only to resurface a few meters away, arms flailing as if they were fighting against an invisible force. Sarah pointed the swimmer out to her friends, who quickly shared her concern. They debated what to do. Should they call for help? Could it be a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the setting sun? Before they could reach a decision, the swimmer vanished beneath the waves again. This time, they did not resurface. Panic set in. Sarah and her friends ran to the nearest lifeguard station, breathless and frantic. The lifeguard, a middle-aged man with weathered skin and a calm demeanor, immediately sprang into action. He called for backup, and soon, a search and rescue operation was underway. Boats and helicopters combed the area where the swimmer had last been seen, but as the hours passed and darkness fell, it became clear that the search was in vain. The swimmer had disappeared without a trace. Exhausted and shaken, Sarah and her friends were escorted to the lifeguard station, where they gave their statements. As they described what they had seen, the lifeguard's expression grew somber. When they finished, he leaned in close and spoke in a low, grave voice. "You're not the first to see him," he said. "The swimmer you described matches the description of a man who drowned here exactly 1 year ago today. His body was never found." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The lifeguard went on to explain that there had been other reports, sightings of a lone swimmer struggling in the water, always on the anniversary of the man's death. Locals believed that his spirit was trapped, reliving his final moments over and over again, unable to move on. Sarah and her friends left the beach that night, the once beautiful place now tainted by a lingering sense of dread. They vowed never to return, and over the years, the memory of the vanishing swimmer haunted their thoughts. They were left with the unsettling realization that some tragedies leave a mark that cannot be washed away by the tides. The ocean, with all its beauty, held secrets they could never fully understand, secrets that might be best left undisturbed. The phantom footsteps. Jake had always felt a deep connection to the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the salty breeze, and the endless horizon brought him a sense of peace he couldn't find anywhere else. So, when the opportunity arose to rent a beach house for a week, he jumped at the chance. The house was perfect, a cozy wooden cabin nestled right on the edge of the dunes, with large windows that offered a panoramic view of the sea. It was everything he had dreamed of, a secluded retreat where he could unwind and leave his worries behind. The first day passed like a dream. Jake spent the morning walking along the beach, collecting seashells and watching seagulls dive for fish. In the afternoon, he lounged on the deck, sipping a cold drink as the sun dipped lower in the sky, turning the water into a shimmering expanse of gold. By the time night fell, he was thoroughly relaxed, feeling the kind of contentment that only comes from being completely at ease with the world. But as he drifted off to sleep that night, something pulled him back to consciousness. It was a sound, soft at first, almost imperceptible, but growing louder with each passing moment. Footsteps. They echoed across the wooden deck just outside his bedroom window, slow and deliberate, as if someone was pacing back and forth. Jake lay still, his heart pounding in his chest. At first, he told himself it was nothing, just the house settling, or maybe an animal wandering across the deck. But the footsteps continued, rhythmic and unnerving, like a person lost in thought, circling the same spot over and over again. Unable to ignore it any longer, Jake got out of bed and cautiously approached the window. He peered through the curtains, his breath fogging the glass, but there was no one there. The deck was empty, bathed in the pale light of the moon, with nothing but the sound of the waves in the distance. Shaking his head, Jake tried to dismiss it as his imagination playing tricks on him. He returned to bed, determined to sleep, but the footsteps resumed, even louder this time. They moved closer to the door, then back to the window, then towards the far end of the deck. The creaking of the wooden boards sent shivers down his spine. The next morning, Jake tried to convince himself that it had all been a dream, a product of his tired mind and the eerie stillness of the night. But as the day went on, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He mentioned the strange sounds to a neighbor, a friendly elderly woman who had lived in the area for decades. She listened quietly, her expression unreadable, before giving him a piece of advice that sent a chill through him. "Keep the lights on at night," she said, her voice low and serious. "And whatever you do, don't go outside after dark." That night, Jake took her advice. He left every light in the house on, hoping the brightness would banish whatever presence had disturbed his sleep. But it made no difference. As soon as he lay down, the footsteps began again, more insistent this time. They moved from the deck to the front door, and Jake could hear the faint creak of the handle, as if someone was trying to open it. Panicked, Jake grabbed a flashlight and, against his better judgment, ventured outside. He searched the deck, the yard, even the dunes, but found nothing. The sand around the house was undisturbed, and there were no signs of anyone, or anything, having been there. Yet the footsteps continued, louder and more frantic, as if they were echoing from another time, another reality. In desperation, Jake called the owner of the beach house the next day, hoping for an explanation. After a long silence, the owner finally spoke, his voice heavy with reluctance. "There's something you should know about the house," he said. "Years ago, a young woman stayed there. She disappeared one night, right off the deck. No one knows what happened to her, whether she drowned, got lost in the dunes, or something else entirely. But ever since then, people have reported hearing footsteps on the deck, and the doors creaking as if someone's trying to get in. They say it's her, still looking for a way back inside." Jake felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. He couldn't bear the thought of spending another night in the house, haunted by the restless spirit of a woman who never found peace. He packed his bags and left the beach house that very afternoon. His dream vacation turned into a nightmare. To this day, Jake avoids beach houses, especially those that stand isolated on the edge of the dunes. He knows that some places, no matter how beautiful, carry a darkness that can't be seen in the light of day. The ocean, with its endless depths and mysterious currents, holds secrets that are best left undisturbed. And sometimes, those secrets have a way of finding you, even when you think you're safe in the comfort of your own home. The drowned bride. Emily and her fiancé, Tom, were looking forward to their beach wedding. The ceremony was set to take place on a picturesque stretch of coastline, with the ocean as their backdrop. Everything was perfect, until the night before the wedding. As the couple and their guests were setting up for the big day, a sudden storm rolled in. The wind howled, and the waves crashed violently against the shore, forcing everyone to take shelter. Amid the chaos, Emily thought she saw a figure standing at the water's edge, a woman in a wedding dress. Thinking it was one of her guests, Emily called out, but the figure didn't respond. Concerned, she ran towards the figure, but as she got closer, the woman disappeared into the waves without a trace. The next morning, the storm had passed, but Emily couldn't shake the eerie encounter from her mind. As they prepared for the ceremony, she mentioned it to one of the locals helping with the setup. The woman's face went pale, and she warned Emily that what she saw was the drowned bride. The legend told of a bride who had drowned on her wedding day many years ago, swept out to sea by a sudden storm. Locals believed that her spirit returned to the beach during storms, searching for her lost groom. Despite the ominous warning, Emily and Tom decided to go ahead with their wedding. The ceremony was beautiful, but as they exchanged vows, a cold wind swept through the crowd, and the waves seemed to rise higher than before. Later that evening, as they celebrated, a massive wave crashed onto the beach, nearly washing away the entire setup. Emily and Tom left the beach in a hurry, cutting their reception short. They later learned that they were not the first couple to encounter the drowned bride. Those who did were said to be cursed with bad luck in their marriage. To this day, Emily still feels a chill when she thinks about her wedding. She wonders if the drowned bride was trying to warn her or if something more sinister was at play. The beach that was meant to be the site of her happiest day had become a place of fear and uncertainty, a reminder that some spirits are never truly at rest.